Turn up the dive, feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's so I remember right. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, ghosts in the hallway whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories that talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the crew. Untold Radio Network, the secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Spectrum. I'm your host, Barnaby Jones. Today, we are live here in studio on the Untold Radio Network, guys. So if you have any questions or comments throughout the show, make sure you get them in the comments section, and we will get to you as soon as possible. When we went live today, it seems like we're having some problems broadcasting over on Facebook. It's just not going through. We're on Hangar One, right? Or we are on not on Hangar One, it looks like. I don't know why it's doing that. So hopefully, if you usually watch this on Facebook, you've found us somewhere else. But anyway, proceeding on. Today is going to be a great show. We have a wonderful guest here. I'm extremely looking forward to picking his brain on some things. But first up, guys, if you're interested in coming out and seeing the team from Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society, we are going to be in Oshkosh, Wisconsin at the Beyond the Veil event coming up in February on the 9th in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. We are going to be at the Midwest Meta-Paracon in Eau Claire, Wisconsin in April. And we are going to be at the Cryptids, Anomalies, and Paranormal Convention in Appleton, Wisconsin, coming up May 9th through the 11th. Guys, tickets are on sale now for this event. Even if you can't make it live and in person to this event, you can get virtual tickets to this, and you can watch all of the speakers from the comfort of your home, either live during the event or at your leisure. You can stream it after the event has concluded and still get all the information. Tickets for the virtual conference are just $5. Then, guys, we head down to Chicago for the Chicago Paranormal Convention on June 7th. And that's the beginning of our year here. If you missed any of that or want it repeated or anything, head on over to wisconsincaps.com and click on the public events tab. If you guys want to show your support for all things here on the Untold Radio Network, here's how.
Hey, Untold Radio Network fans. Want exclusive perks and to support our channel? Introducing our YouTube membership program with 3 amazing levels. Get loyalty badges that level up to different cryptids the longer you're a supporter. How cool is that? You'll also get access to custom Bigfoot emojis and priority in chat. Upgrade to Backstage Pass for exclusive wallpapers, photos, status updates, discounted books, and merchandise. Go all in with the producer level for everything mentioned plus member shoutouts. Ready for an enhanced experience? Join now, pick your membership level, and let's make this journey even more exciting together.
All right, guys, like I said, we are live. So if you have any questions or comments throughout the show, feel free to throw them into the comments section and we'll get to them as soon as possible. My guest today is Bruce Rapuano. I need to slow down because apparently I can't read or speak at all today. Bruce Rapuano. I am not going to even say his name right. Rapuano. I apologize. I sincerely apologize because I can't read it all today. He has a degree in the University of Pennsylvania where he majored in neurobiology and minored in psychology, a Ph.D. in neuropharmacology from the University of Connecticut, and a J.D. from New York Law School. Dr. Rapuano has conducted independent biological research as a cell biologist at internationally recognized medical institutes, including the Memorial Sloan-Kettering Cancer Center and the Hospital of Special Surgeries, both located in New York City. He has authored and co-authored 30 scientific articles in peer-reviewed medical journals. He has published articles on topics such as the role of the membrane, phospholipids in nerve function, the skeletal effects of cancer, metastases, metabolic bone disease, and coordinated surfaces, electrical and biological properties of titanium alloy implant materials. He has also worked concurrently as a medical research scientist and associate in radiation safety officer at the Hospital of Special Surgeries. And what's weird is the long words I can say fine, and the other words I cannot say at all. So I'm sure Lee is watching and has a wonderful time with that today. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Bruce Rapuano. Welcome.
First of all, it's great to be here with you today. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. Second, I'm perfectly happy with Bruce as long as I can call you Barnaby.
Absolutely.
Why do we do that?
That sounds great. That sounds great. Because I practice reading that and saying your name before the show, and as soon as it goes live, my brain just backfires, and that was it. We were done. So,
but the name is there. I can see my name printed, but that's if anyone wants to look me up, they've got the name there. But let's call each other by our first names.
That sounds great. I appreciate it, man. Well, we have a lot to get through, man. I unfortunately have not got a chance to read your book, but I have listened to a lot of the other interviews of you talking about it and stuff. So I'm very familiar with all the stuff we got going on here, and I have so many questions. I want to start off just kind of basically. Can you tell everyone kind of the interesting part of this is you are a scientist, you are a acclaimed researcher, and that's the importance of this book, is someone coming forward. Oh, let's get to that. There we go. Your book is the first book that's actually published by a scientist's own abduction story, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so let's start off and kind of give a little bit of background of, we talked about your degrees and stuff like that, but what is it that you actually do? What kind of scientists were you and fields that you worked in?
Well, so my background is, as you mentioned, it started in the field of neurobiology, where I majored in neurobiology at the University of Pennsylvania, and then I became fascinated with the subject and then studied neuropharmacology, was able to obtain a Ph.D. in that discipline at the University of Connecticut. And neuropharmacology is the study of the effects of drugs on the brain. And, it's interesting that I was always fascinated with not only with biology, but particularly with the function of the brain. I remember, and we can get to this maybe a little bit later in the podcast, at an early age, I was interested in actually ESP and extrasensory abilities, and always interested in things related to memory and precognition and telepathy. So it's not really surprising I would be interested in studying the brain and its function, as I progressed through school and in college and so forth. But I then, for some reason, the way this just worked out is I got into the field of cancer research and worked at the time, and I think it's still one of the top-rated cancer centers in the world, Memorial Sloan-Kettering Cancer Center in New York City, and where I studied the effects of cancer that's invaded the skeleton and caused metastases throughout the skeleton, and with the goal of trying to control that and to treat that particular consequence of some forms of cancer. But then after that, I moved my area of research to metabolic bone diseases, studying rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, and with a particular focus on trying to develop the next generation of artificial implants, orthopedic implants, artificial knees, artificial hips, dental implants. And what's interesting is I really got into a lot of different disciplines that were really far afield from neuroscience, particularly material science, where I studied the surface electrical properties of titanium alloy implant materials that are used in orthopedics and also in dental implants, and how to modify the electrical surface properties to be able to get those implants to integrate better after implantation and have greater longevity, so that they wouldn't need replaced every 5 or 10 or 20 years. So pharmacology gives scientists a very broad background in the medical sciences. But even beyond that, I was able to get into areas like material science and related areas. So I kind of had and not only that, at the same time, I was our research division's radiation safety officer. So I had to learn a lot about nuclear medicine, which I had some training for in graduate school. But it really prepared me to have kind of a broader understanding of the sciences, which you really need to be able to analyze this UFO UAP phenomenon, in particular the phenomenon of alien abduction. So not only that, based on my background, I was in a perfect position to investigate this phenomenon and perhaps report on it. But I'm an actual experiencer of UFO close encounters and repeated alien abductions. So it was a perfect storm for me to, at this time, in the midst of disclosure, to write this book, Dominion Lost. So that's, in a nutshell, my background and as it pertains to why I wrote this book.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. Well, you've been doing a lot of the podcast circuit and stuff, and doing a lot of shows and that, and there's a lot of stuff out there that you've been asked 100 times, and I like to get an idea of where you've been and stuff before we go into these interviews and that, so I don't ask you the same question 100 times that people can hear on every show. So you've had an abduction encounter. You've talked about it on like every single podcast, and we can touch on it if we need to go back and pick up some stuff here, but I think we're gonna just leave it at that. I mean, like it's pretty much the typical abduction encounter storyline in that. So you do talk about what I'd like to know is you talk about a lot about the implants and stuff in your book. Now, do you get that from do you think that something was implanted in you specifically, and then do you think that well, let's start here. Do you think that what I want to get at is knowing that you were abducted and had that encounter from, you said age 6 was the first time that you remember.
Mhm.
Do you think that influenced where you went with your career professionally?
Well, I can remember as far back as age 5 or 6, about the time I was abducted, I was very interested in human biology. I mean, I was interested in, as I mentioned before, a variety of scientific disciplines, but first became interested in biology at the age of 5. And, I had these experiences mainly from the age of 6 years old till maybe my early teens. And then, as I said earlier, for some reason, I became interested in human capability, or beyond, what human beings capable of cognitively, but of whether or not human beings had extrasensory abilities. I studied the subject so much at the age of only 12 or 13 that one of my teachers had asked me to lecture on it to the students in class. And, how this relates to my experiences, I believe, has to do with the fact that throughout the multiple abduction experiences I've had, I've always been able to point to examples where I had some type of communication with these alien beings who abducted me that was extrasensory, that involved some type of nonverbal telepathic communication, either where I could hear a voice inside my head that was not mine, or I was thinking about something, asking a question during the abduction experience, and was made to understand the answer to the question. I really didn't know how that happened. It was almost as if someone was eavesdropping on my internal dialogue and kind of letting me know the answer to the question. And lo and behold, in my, as I said, 12 years old, in my early teens, I became fascinated with the subject, mainly not just of the broad subject of ESP, but particularly with person-to-person nonverbal communication that we call telepathy. And I think it was a natural evolution that I would become interested in neurobiology, and then that later evolved into interest in subject and study in the subject of neuropharmacology, the effect of drugs on the brain. So I think, yes, it was my career path and my professional interest, I think, were affected by my anomalous experiences, for lack of a better term. So I think that's true.
Very interesting. It seems like you talked about in your book as well, that very into the implants and stuff that people you said
Mhm.
are a lot of times found in the nasal cavity or the nose and stuff like that.
Yes.
And then you go on to work with dental implants and titanium implants and things of that nature. And I was kind of looking, you went the other way with it, which is completely fascinating as well. But I was thinking that had kind of an impact. And you said it helped with your research and stuff, writing the book, having that background. But I was wondering if it went the other way as well, that having those experiences led to that, or didn't you realize that there was that connection until you started working on it?
I have no explanation for it. It's almost as if it was part of my destiny. My wife, who's an MD Ph.D., said something interesting. She said it's almost as if your professional background was orchestrated. You were, you went through the professional experiences you did to prepare you for reporting on these alien encounter anomalous experiences in this book, Dominion Lost. It's almost like my life was planned for me, even to the point where I never anticipated being a cell biologist working in the area of metabolic bone disease, that I would then move to, working with materials that were related to, orthopedic or dental implants. That's something that I never anticipated. I never desired to do. Never planned on it. It just worked out that way. And it was certainly very, very helpful having this background, this knowledge in writing some of the parts of the book that dealt with the topic of implants. It just worked out that way.
Now, in the book, you also talk about how, like, you believe that some of these implants could be directing people or used to kind of control or influence them. Do you think that, you mentioned now that your whole life kind of led you to be able to do this? Do you think that was directed by them?
I don't know. It's possible. I don't have any evidence that would point to a particular abduction experience where I was given information, where I had a download, or I had a communication, telepathic or otherwise, where I was advised by an elder mentor who happened to be one of the aliens who abducted me to enter into this field. It was all, seemingly reflective of some type of a subconscious process. I don't know if it's just coincidence, but it does feel almost as if, as a young child or a young adult, I had a glimpse into the future and was preparing myself for the subjects I needed to study to complete my purpose here on Earth. Yeah, but I don't have any direct evidence to really strongly scientifically support that theory, which is just a theory that I have.
Absolutely. Very interesting. I'm sorry if I'm jumping around. I have a lot of questions. A lot of questions, and we have a short time, and I'm trying to phrase everything in a way that we can get through it all here. But okay, so going forward then, if you can kind of talk about, you've told the story on a lot of other podcasts as well about seeing the UFO while out playing kickball. Okay, if you can kind of briefly sum that up, because I have some questions related to that story as well.
Sure. Yes, this was it was summer game of kickball, and I can remember the exact date, June 19, 1965. This was the year of the Great Northeast Blackout, where actually was the worst blackout in America at the time. I think 35 or 40 million people were without power for 12 to 24 hours, which happened in the following November. But we were a group of four people playing four on a side, playing this game of kickball in our front yard. I happened to see out of the corner of my eye a brilliant light in the sky around the 10 o'clock position. I couldn't really see it well because the view was obstructed by an oak tree that was on the center of our front lawn. So then I walked toward the front door of our house, and what I saw was amazing. It was I describe it as having the configuration of the biblical Star of Bethlehem. It looked like a star, but it wasn't a point source of light in the sky. This was literally 2.5 to 3 times the size of a full moon. It was so brilliant, it was almost difficult to look at. And, all the other kickball players joined me, and we're looking at this for maybe half a minute, maybe a minute. And then, as if by the flip of a switch, the light turned off, and it was replaced in the same area of the sky by the classic, what's known as the classic fireball UFO, which looks like a ball of fire in the sky, probably the size of a dime held at arm's length. And whereas before the light, the Star of Bethlehem wasn't moving at all, it was motionless, silent, I could see that the fireball was starting to move. But the upshot is I followed it for maybe a minute and a half until it disappeared over the horizon. The strangest thing was when I came back, because I had to walk to a neighbor's yard to be able to see it, disappear over the tops of the trees in the forest behind our property. But when I came back, we started talking, sharing notes, and about what we had seen, and a number of people saw features of this that I hadn't seen, which was just at the time completely shocking to me, because I had very excellent vision. I didn't wear glasses at the time, actually better than normal distance vision. And someone had reported seeing 3 multicolored lights. I didn't see anything like that. And the upshot is there was other evidence that points to the fact that I clearly, even though I was sure I never took my eyes off the UFO for more than a second or two, I was not present at the scene of that particular UFO sighting for some period of time. And one person in particular had noticed that. And, considering this particular experience within the context of all my other abduction encounters, other UFO close encounters, it's consistent with another abduction event. That's basically the summary of what happened for that particular event.
Okay. You missed the the point that I want to make. Can you talk about the Oz effect?
Yes. The Oz effect is so often reported with in particular, these UFO close encounters where the UFO seems to be at a distance of 500 feet or closer. But what I noticed immediately when I was watching the Star of Bethlehem is that suddenly the sound, all the ambient noises in our neighborhood, sound of the crickets, the grasshoppers, which at that time of year in Connecticut usually is deafening, but I couldn't hear anything. You could hear a pin drop. And what I did was I turned, thinking that maybe I was just so obsessed and fascinated with this unusual experience that I was, forgetting what was happening around me. I deliberately turned my head away from the UFO toward the forest in our backyard and listened. I still couldn't hear anything. And what was weirder and more frightening was that when I did this, the classmate of mine on my left appeared to be frozen, paralyzed, wasn't saying anything, wasn't moving. And I knew this because I became alarmed. I knew this instantly. And to the point where I automatically turned away from him back toward looking at the UFO because I didn't like the feeling it gave me. And I also noticed that the people on my right were not talking, were not moving, were not making any sound. And this is very typical, very characteristic of what's been known as the Oz effect. This change in the environment. It's almost as if there's a change in human perception or some actual transformation in the physical environment that maybe has something to do with perhaps the energy system or the propulsion system of the UFO that's approached it, at very close to a very close proximity, that's affecting perhaps, if not perception, then perhaps even the passage of time. There may be some, I'm speculating, some relativistic effect. But it's just so typical, so characteristic. It has been reproduced, at least even in the abduction literature. It's been reported so many times that it really is one of the hallmarks of the UFO close encounter today.
Absolutely. So now I have a two-part question on this one. So first of all, with your experiences and from your background and everything, we're again just speculating and stuff here, but do you believe that the individuals that you've interacted with, were they extraterrestrial off-world, or do you believe that they were more interdimensional from a different plane here on Earth, or something else?
It's almost as well, I have to say that from my study of this and my actual following the people, the ufologists and the people that report on this, it's almost as if I won't say everyone has a different theory, but there's such a multiplicity of theories. My theory is grounded in the fact that the beings I saw consistently reflected the anatomical appearance of the classic gray alien. They were always no taller than 3.5 to 4 feet tall, disproportionately large, hairless heads. And, I compared this to the information that was, in particular, that was reported by Lieutenant Colonel Philip Corso in the day after Roswell. You remember, he was the intelligence officer, the Army intelligence officer that in 1961, I think, was appointed head of foreign intelligence who claimed to have received a lot of the debris from the UFO crash in Roswell that he then farmed out to various universities and farmed out to industry for the purpose of reverse engineering the crash UFO. But he also reported a lot on the autopsy reports that were apparently done by pathologists at Walter Reed Hospital on the aliens that were the bodies of the aliens that were recovered at Roswell, and the external anatomical appearance as reported in those autopsy reports that are described in detail in the day after Roswell closely mirrored the beings that I saw and the beings, the classic grays I'm talking about, that thousands of people have reported seeing. And so, in addition, there was a lot of information not only about the external anatomy as reported in the day after Roswell, but a lot of details about the internal anatomy. So I think, based on what was reported, I suggest, and other people, other investigators in this field have suggested that the grays have been genetically engineered for some particular purpose by a higher order advanced alien civilization, probably for the purpose of experimenting on human beings to serve some agenda. But based on that, all that information about what we know about what's been reported on regarding the external and internal anatomy of the grays, I think there's a lot of evidence that at the very least we're interacting with physical, corporeal, sentient beings. That doesn't mean that we're not being visited by a variety of countless alien civilizations, some of which may be related to the grays, some of which may be responsible for creating this genetically engineered species of drones, they've been called, but may be working independently of whatever the gray alien agenda is. But what I've speculated on in Dominion Lost is that the beings that abduct human beings are real. They exist in our space-time continuum. But in terms of what their origin is, whether or not they're part of our the same physical universe, or if you follow the many worlds interpretation of the universe, whether they're from a different dimension, they originate from a different dimension of our contiguous physical universe, that's something I don't really have any evidence to support or argue against. So I just assume that the grays are real, they're biological. Some investigators have referred to them as cyborgs, which is certainly a possibility. But that's my theory.
Very good, interesting. I think that's about as far as you can go without knowing for sure anything. And just base it on
Right.
the science and what people have said in that. So awesome. Okay, so with that in mind, then now I don't know if you have qualifications to answer this or know anything about this. So if you don't, then we're good. But you talked a little bit about working with radiation and the electromagnetic fields and stuff like that. So the higher vibration, the higher up in the EMF field we go, you get to the radiation and stuff like that. And with some of these close encounter cases, we have had stories of radioactive like radiation poisoning and stuff on the contactees, right? Like when you see the ships and stuff like that in person on that. So my question is, do you know if we're hypothesizing that these things are coming from another dimension, like a higher vibrational dimension, would there be any kind of time dilation when you go up in the electromagnetic field So if they're coming down in vibration to our vibrational level, is there any kind of thing that would explain like the Oz effect of why they're moving faster or at a faster rate and we're not, and that's why everything seems to slow down or dilate like that? Does that make sense?
I understand what you're getting at, and but I don't think if there is anything that's attributable to the UFOs during these close encounters that's causing this Oz effect based on time dilation. I think it's probably related more to the gravitational propulsion system that I believe, and others, particularly Bob Lazar, believe describes the actual physical nature of the UFO propulsion system. That may not be electromagnetic, but it may actually be based on a propulsion system that generates standing gravitational waves that can bend space and time, which in that case would be expected to have some effect on, through general relativity, some effect on time dilation, and depending on how close the individuals, the abductees, are to the UFO at the time of the close encounter. But that, I would attribute that to a general relativity related effect in terms of the effect on time.
So more on the gravitational field than the actual like radiation of it. Okay.
Right.
I don't know. It was just I was listening to you on another podcast and I started thinking about that, and I was just wondering if it. I don't know. I don't know. So that was cool. All right, we have a question, or actually a comment here. I want to go back to. So AAO says that he is an abduction survivor and he's glad that you're here to share your story and glad that you are alive. He says his implant looked like a cocoon the size of a roly-poly, and it was in his ear.
Yes. So I would say, upward of 20% of interviewed abductees report having some type of implant in the region of their head, either behind the ear, inside the ear canal. Whitley Strieber says he has an implant in his earlobe, or underneath the eye. And 10% report having and I'm one of that 10%, having experience with nasal implants, where they can remember being on a table on board a UFO and an alien being has a probe with a spherical 2 to 3 millimeter diameter metallic implant, and the probe is inserted through the nasal cavity. When the probe is removed, the abductee can no longer see the metallic sphere, and which causes the abductee to gather that they've been implanted. I can actually remember not only the structure of this spherical implant. It had studs or projections on the surface. I can remember being told, be careful if you sneezed too hard or blew your nose too forcefully, it could become dislodged. That's how that memory is what allowed me to come to the realization that my implant was a nasal implant. But this is not uncommon for abductees to report. And the question is, what is the purpose of these implants? They certainly have purpose or purposes beyond tracking device, beyond the purpose of a tracking device. I'm confident.
Lee here also says, I had a nasal implant, uncontrollable nosebleeds as a child. Right. I had to go to the doctor for it. I remember you were kind of talking about that as well.
Yes. There's this constellation of symptoms that people with nasal implants very commonly report, and that's what really struck me in reading these, great UFO abduction books by Dr. John Mack, the Harvard psychiatrist. Whitley Strieber wrote a book, Bud Hopkins in the 80s, because they were all reporting what I had experienced. They had a memory of a nasal implant, uncontrolled nosebleeds. Doctors had examined them for some reason. They'd had procedures, perhaps. At the same age that I had this recollection of an implant, at the age of 6, abductees are reported having these nosebleeds, and when they went in for a surgical procedure like the removal of their tonsils, as I had, the doctor discovered an unexplained scar in their nasopharynx, the back of the throat behind the nasal cavity, or somewhere within the nasal cavity, that they couldn't explain. So all of these physical, all of these symptoms constitute physical evidence supporting that the abductees have had some type of interventional procedure, some type of intrusive, invasive procedure while on board a UFO involving implants. And it's just so striking that everything that's been reported by abductees in literature regarding this particular epiphenomenon of the UFO abduction phenomenon are things that I've experienced. So this is what makes me even more convinced that this is a reality.
Now, I 100% don't claim to be an abductee myself or anything, or have any memory of any of this. But one thing you said there did resonate very weird with me here is growing up, I had in my earlobe, like right where you would get like an earring pierced through it,
Mm-hmm.
I had this, like, you could feel like a grain of sand or like a small little ball in my earlobe. And as I got older, it went from my ear back to behind my neck, and it ended on the back of my neck, and it actually grew into a big cyst that I had to have removed. But I could feel
Wow.
it travel from my earlobe. It's not there anymore, and it went to the back. And I don't know. I always wondered what the heck that was too.
I can't explain medically, physiologically, why that would happen. I have to ask you, have you read enough of Whitley Strieber's work or seen any of his podcasts where he claims almost exactly the same thing has happened to him? In fact, even during he had a filmed surgical procedure where he had a surgeon attempt to remove the implant from the earlobe, and during the procedure, the implant moved to another part of his ear, causing the surgeon to halt the procedure. And he was unable, for some reason, to remove the implant. He thought it was probably medically advisable not to continue the procedure. And according to Whitley Strieber, the implant is still inside, I think either the earlobe or I think the pinna of his ear. But you're the only other person that I've heard in this field that's mentioned that particular experience.
Yeah, I was not aware of that. I know
Yes.
Lee mentioned that he had it in his earlobe as well, and that's what I was like, that's what I had. But I don't listen to his podcast or anything, and I've only read his one book. So yeah, that's weird.
Yeah,
Also,
it's really very strange.
I also used to get a lot of nosebleeds and hiccups. I would have
Okay.
the hiccups for like a solid day straight, where I just couldn't get rid of it. So I don't know if that has anything to do with anything, but that's stopped as I've gotten older too. But I don't know. I don't remember the nosebleeds being.
How old were you?
Going to the doctor. I don't know, like elementary school age.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You were you were either 5 to 10 years old, and you don't recall any medical explanation for why at that time of your life you had these series of unexplained nosebleeds. Did you have any medical issues that can explain it?
No, I always just saw it was like dried, like I've always thought that the inside of my nasal cavity just dried out and cracked, and that's why I got the nosebleeds. But
right, that would cause the experience that I had, where I had a lot of blood trickling from both nostrils. It was streaming down
I didn't have that.
all the way to my chin. And yeah, that I mean, I had that, as many abductees reported, what I would describe as a severe nosebleed
Mhm.
on one occasion. Again, with no medical explanation. Yeah.
Again, like I said, I don't have any recognition
Mm-hmm.
of being abducted or anything, but the
Right.
earlobe thing was just really weird. Okay. Let's see. I want to get back to Lee has another question here for you. Dr. Rapuano. Give up, Bruce. What is your blood type? Do you happen to be O negative?
No, I'm not. Yeah. How did she guess?
There's a whole conversation here about abductions, and Lee and AAO have been having about nosebleeds, and Lee's had nosebleeds as well. AAO's abductee and his son has nosebleeds. I know you talk. We can talk more about the generational thing here in a minute as well, but there's a whole conversation about blood and noses and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think 15% of the population is Rh negative. Right, that's 85. Most of us are, I think, Rh positive. I believe. I'm going up now on the issue of the Rh factor, but the point is, there's a theory in the UFO literature that a much higher percentage compared to the general population of abductees have this Rh factor, which is something that is pointed to as representing an interest on the part of the abductors, the captors, the aliens who abduct human beings, in certain aspects of human biology, and may have to do with the Rh factor. I tend to think there's no evidence. There's nothing that interesting about the Rh factor that would prompt highly advanced alien species to want to abduct human beings. But again, that has been discussed, and I was wondering if that's what your viewer was getting to. But that can be another podcast episode, so we don't have to get into that whole issue.
Because a lot of abductees are O negative.
Okay.
And I have heard that, but I wasn't sure on the blood type, but I do know that a lot of the abductees, I think Strieber talks about that too. And one of the books that just came out, was it Skinwalkers at the Pentagon or something, also talked about a specific blood type being targeted more or something. But yeah.
So the answer to that question is, in my case, yes.
You are O negative. I am not. I am B positive. So, all right. Okay. What? Let's see. Sometimes when AAO was taken, it was in front of an electrical power plant. I wonder if electrical power plants have anything to do with it. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, the episode the abduction episode that I discussed when we were playing kickball in our front yard, there is a power transmission line, maybe 100 foot tall, that's maybe 50 to 100 yards from where we were when we saw the Star of Bethlehem UFO. And there have been hundreds, thousands of reports, as I report in Dominion Lost, of UFOs hovering over transmission lines, almost directly over the transmission lines. In a couple of cases, at least, so close that the UFO extended some type of the device that made physical contact with one of the transmission lines. So there's some apparent interest that UFOs have in our power grids, in our power transmission system. And I don't have any theory as to what they're interested in, but it's been very commonly reported. And yes, as a matter of fact, our property was very close to a field behind our backyard where there was miles and miles of power transmission lines. And someone had insisted, God, not more than a couple of weeks before this sighting of the Star of Bethlehem UFO, that there was another UFO sighting, but over the field behind our backyard where the UFO was seen directly over our transmission lines. And, I didn't believe it, but one of my neighbors said, no, this has been commonly reported in our neighborhood. That, again, was just within a week or two of the sighting I described. So this is very typical.
Okay. So you talked about your first memory of being abducted was when you were about 6 years old. When did you have the recollection of this? I mean, did you start thinking about aliens and stuff when you were 6 years old when it happened, or did it happen and then like 20 years later you're like, wait a minute, this is starting to add up? Like, where in that kind of did that fall in?
Well, as I say, Barnaby, in the foreword of Dominion Lost, the experiences that we tend to remember the longest and in the greatest detail are the ones that make the greatest impression on us. And for some reason, the experiences in my life, particularly from my childhood, that I tend to retain and actually remember to almost to the last detail are these almost exclusively these anomalous experiences with UFO close encounters and encounters with these strange alien beings. And so I could remember not really being able to integrate them into my life at a young age, but still wondering what had happened to me at the age of, I would be thinking about these experiences, within, in the ensuing weeks or months after they happened, and years afterward, I would ponder them, not really knowing what to make of them, until the UFO abduction books came out in the 80s, and I made the connection between what was happened to me, what had happened to, perhaps thousands of other people in America. But before that, I
dream. Like,
no, I thought absolutely not. I remember one experience where I can remember being on board the UFO, where I saw dozens of grays. That I was in a hospital. I had some type of procedure. Before the encounter, I'd had terrible ear infections, which returned after in the fall and winter after the abduction event. And the connection I made was between that event and my medical symptoms was I had a procedure to treat this particular medical issue that I had of these recurrent ear infections. So I thought it was real. I thought I'd been brought to some type of strange hospital where I saw the strangest doctors I'd ever observed in my life. But that's how I had integrated that particular experience into the rest of my life. But other than that, I didn't know what to make of the totality of my experiences during my childhood and in early adult life when I would think about them. But in doing so, I was able to preserve almost in their entirety the content of all of these abduction experiences for the rest of my life. And that's why I was able to describe them in the book in actually sufficient detail, where I'm very confident that these are memories that were crystallized in my mind for my entire life. And this is why I have so much confidence in reporting them as things that really did happen to me.
Fascinating. A lot of people report having like you remember being taken multiple times and stuff like that, and a lot of people talk about having a specific like guide or one individual that stays with them throughout this process. Do you recall a specific individual or anything?
That's very interesting. Very interesting you brought that up, because I don't think you've read the chapter called Stairway to an Alternate Reality, where I had a sense, I call it a sense memory. It was a flashback that was essentially activated by my mother. I was 2 to 3 years old at the time, no more than that. She was activated by my mother picking me up. We were walking up the stairs to our apartment, and I was getting tired, and she picked me up, and that seemed to activate a memory of being with the Grays. And I could remember, it was such a rich memory. I could remember walking with two of them, holding hands with one on my right, one on my left. I don't know where we were. But along with that memory of that particular instance, maybe I can remember having a relationship with these beings. Not only that, but then I felt that I missed them. I felt, in some sense, abandoned by the fact that now I'm in the realm and the world of human beings, but the beings I've been with previously, I don't know when, I don't know where, were my mentors, and they were more equipped to educate me in all the ways I needed to be educated beyond school education than any human beings could. And that as I say, I felt the sense of loss in being separated from them. But that's the only memory that kind of touches on the subject that you brought up. But it's a very rich and long-lasting memory that I've had my entire life, that I knew these beings somehow.
Catherine says, fascinating guest, show content, and chat this morning. So thank you so much for that. We have a thread here kind of going that I want to come back to and see if we can follow up with here. So Lee has I also have a memory of being in a womb room on the ship. Pretty sure I was in like a cedar program. And then they go on to talk about like a half pizza shaped oven room. And then other people being there as well. This one, the girl in the room next to me, I met her in real life back on Earth. I wasn't supposed to wake up. I wish I hadn't. So a lot of people, like, I don't know if this is the same thing that they're talking about, but a lot of people talk about like being in this like waiting room or something as well, like kind of a rounded room. Do you have any memories of that? Yeah,
absolutely. I knew, as I say, I've already described to you being on board a UFO, on a table, the classic medical exam table, where I can see dozens of grays in front of me, maybe 20 feet from me, from the foot of the table. But there was an entranceway separating the room I was in from what I describe as a hallway, where these beings were walking from left to right, from right to left, almost in lockstep. But it was separated by what I describe as what looked like a garage door size doorway, like a garage door, but where the garage door has been opened. And I didn't know if it receded into the ceiling but it was a clear separation between the room I was in and where the Grays were walking in what I call a hallway. But I had the sense at the time that they were walking very quickly. They had clearly a seriousness of purpose, and the sense that there were other rooms like the room I was in, and these beings were walking to some of these rooms for whatever particular purpose. I didn't see any beings in the room I was in at that time, but I did have a sense that I was in a large facility, and there probably were other rooms like the one I was in. I could not see any other human beings.
Okay. Interesting. All right. We are coming up here on the end of the show. So if anybody has any more questions for our guest here, it's been a great time. I got to say, like, I seem very flustered, and this isn't normal. It's just because I have so much going on in my head right now that I'm trying to get it all and get it in and figure it all out here. But if anybody has any more questions, go ahead. Sorry.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the fascinating questions and comments from your viewers as well.
Absolutely.
That really, most of which resonate with what I've experienced. So that's also fascinating to me.
Absolutely. So actually, yep, as I said, like if you guys have any other further questions or comments, we will get them in before we sign off here. If you get them in the comments there, try and put them in all caps so I realize that they're there and see them. But I mean, there's so much going on. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, anything else you want to mention, I'm available. But I did want to mention before I forget,
Mhm.
About the book. The book has a lot of scientific analysis, since
Yes.
I am a scientist, of what caused the UFO, the Great Northeast Blackout of 1965, of how straightforwardly using human science, the Greys could have been genetically engineered from one of our early human hominin ancestors. How the UFO gravity propulsion system, talked about by Bob Lazar, actually works in terms of how element 115 is used to generate gravitational energy. But there are people that just want to hear only about my abduction and UFO close encounter experiences. So I have an abridged version, which does not have all of the science, so much of the science related chapters. And I just wanted to show that.
Yes.
So that's a much shorter book. That's the abridged version. This is about maybe 200 pages. Now, you may decide you're interested in the scientific analysis after you read the abridged version. So then you can maybe pick up the other one as well. But I do want to mention that I have 2 versions of Dominion Lost. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a very good point. Like I definitely would be. I told you I don't read physical books. I don't have time, so I either have to listen to them on audiobook or get like a PDF copy of them, and then I have a reader that reads it to me while I'm at work and stuff, and I can listen to it. So I'm definitely interested in picking up your other book.
So both of those books have audiobooks, virtual audiobooks that are excellent. I mean, they probably do a better job than I could have done if I were to read the books myself as audiobooks. So,
or myself trying to pronounce things. Yeah. So,
and it's an AI. It's an AI audiobook.
Very cool.
Well, a virtual audiobook.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, like I said, I have an app on my phone that is AI that reads PDFs to me. So a lot of the times I get copies of them. I ask for specific books, and I can get them read to me instead of if there's not an audiobook available.
That's great. I wasn't aware of that. That's great.
Yeah. Technology, when it works, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, man. Oh, I appreciate it. We have links in the show notes to your book on Amazon. And it doesn't look like any other questions. Kentucky Tennessee Bigfoot says he will catch up. He missed the beginning. Yeah, you're late, buddy. And Lee says, of course, my blood type is B positive because I'm a positive person. Thanks, Lee. And thank you for sharing your story, Bruce.
And she guessed my blood type. She even guessed my blood type too. That was, your viewer Lay was
Lee,
quite interesting.
Yep. Yeah. Oh yeah, she's a barrel of fun. But yeah, so do you do any presentations? Are you got any conferences or anything coming up where you're going to present or anything?
Not coming up very soon, but anyone can follow my story on my Facebook page, Bruce Edward Rapuano, and there's all my appearances are listed there.
Very cool. Awesome, man. I appreciate your time so much, man. We're at the end of the hour. I don't want to hold you up and keep you today, but it's been an absolute blast. Like I said, I'm sorry if I've been kind of flustered today, but I have a lot of questions, and there's any of it, like your stories, your abduction stuff, and that pretty much you've told on every podcast that's out there. And I don't like to repeat stuff. I know you being on podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Get the same questions over and over, and yeah, they can go listen to someone else's podcast and get that. And we're gonna dive deep into it from the beginning. So,
well, I really enjoyed it. Again, thanks for having me on. It was fun, and I appreciate the fact that you try to answer novel questions, and I always learn something. When I get the chance to tell my story to someone in particular, someone who's hosting a show like your show. So I appreciate that.
I appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
All right. Good luck with your podcast. Look forward to your continued success with it in the future.
Too, man. Take care, and we'll see you later, man.
All right.
All right, guys, that is our show. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you all for your comments and your questions and stuff throughout the show. It's great. I love having the live shows because it gives you a chance to interact with our guests and get the information that you guys want to hear and see. So that's awesome. I appreciate it. If there's anybody that you'd like me to get on the show, feel free to reach out and let me know either on social media or wisconsincaps@gmail.com. You can email me directly and we'll try and get that person on. If you want to be on the show, do the same thing. Tell me your story and we'll see if what we can do to get you on here and have a conversation. So guys, until next time, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share everything here on the Untold Radio Network, as well as Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society, my team. Until next time, take care, be well, and remember, we're all part of the paranormal spectrum. Have a great week, guys.